I don't hear the sounds of ecstasy.
Dude, lick your hand and spank her. Do you have enough hair?
Hello everyone, and we're back for another King of the Hill episode analysis. So I'm going to level with y'all. I know some of my opinions are not the most popular, and I understand that there's going to be disagreements here and there, so I'm going to give a disclaimer here. My takes in this episode may be especially hot, but please give me a chance to explain myself. With that out of the way, we will be looking at an episode from Season 7. Now, if you've been subscribed to me for a certain amount of time, you'd know my opinion on Season 7. And while I do think there was a shift in the quality of the show here, there are a lot of good episodes in this season. Boxing Luann, Pygmalion, Officer and a Gentle Boy, the list goes on. But for some of the other episodes, they're mostly just okay. It was this season that I would consider falling in between the classic era and the modern era. And the episode that kickstarted this transitional season was Get Your Freak Off. The episode opens with Hank making a birthday gift for Peggy that is clearly not the sexual object she was hinting at.
Peggy's birthday's coming up, and she was hinting that she wanted something for in the bedroom.
While he's doing this, he hears Con honking at Bobby, who is in the middle of the street listening to his headphones. Hank yanks him out of the road and drops this great line.
People are going to think we didn't teach you shame, and I know we have.
While chastising Bobby, he hears the song through the headphones and asks him what kind of music he's listening to. Bobby says it's the latest rap artist, and Hank resolves to take him to the CD store, remember those, to get some other music. Nice bank shot, Hank. At the store, Bobby picks out a bunch of CDs, and Hank notices the parental advisory sticker. He goes to a listening stand to sample the music and is immediately put off by pretty much everything. Now, I don't really have an issue with Hank doing this. I don't think it's wrong that a parent is aware of what kind of media their kid is consuming. That's a mark of a responsible parent. And as a responsible parent, one must be aware that you must sometimes be the heavy when it comes to denying your child something they want if you deem it inappropriate. Granted, there's a huge difference between these two albums, despite the fact they both have the parental advisory sticker. So I don't think it's a bad thing Hank is doing this, though I do think he was being a bit harsh here.
That's a great album.
Put it back.
There are a few moments in this episode where I don't agree with Hank, so don't worry. So Hank burns through most of the albums, not liking any of them, despite the fact he doesn't seem to get more than 10 seconds in per album while listening. But he finally settles on an album by a boy band called Fourscore. He likes the band's sound and resolves that this is the music that Bobby should be listening to.
One fine day, God was kicking it in heaven.
I guess that was good enough for him. Outside in the alley, Hank talks to the guys about Fourscore, to which the guys make fun of him for liking a boy band, despite Hank saying it's wholesome music for kids.
If your kids like listening to castrati.
And even going so far as to say they're pretty good. Bobby excitedly tells Hank that the Fourscore concert in Houston has more available tickets for sale when they were previously sold out, to which Hank is so excited he can't even conceal such a fact from everyone. So the kids are all getting ready to drive down to the concert, and Connie comes up introducing a new friend, Jordan, that she knows from a supplemental school program. Bobby and Jordan seem to hit it off in what is possibly one of the most realistic preteen meetings ever depicted on television.
It's nice to meet you, Jordan.
Sorry, I just got my braces. I'm still a little jumpy. I already got smacked in the lip with a volleyball. I got stitches. Do you want to see?
Yes, I do. That's disgusting.
Meanwhile, the wives on the street are out getting margaritas and decide to rank who the sexiest man on their street is. Min starts and says Boomhauer is number 1, to which Peggy is surprised. Okay, Peggy, do you really think Hank would be sexier than Boomhauer? You think Hank has the swagger to leave his home in nothing but a leopard print Speedo? I don't think so. Anyway, Nancy chimes in.
Well, I think Dale is second.
Dale?
Okay, I'm with you on that one, Peggy.
He is unbelievably limber.
Yeah, he also smokes like a chimney, has nicotine stains on his elbows, and cries uncontrollably after sex, according to Nancy. Min argues that Con ties for second because
He has big ass and pompadour and his stomach is ripped.
that's more like it.
And then I guess his second tier is Hank and Bill.
Peggy argues that Hank being on the same tier as Bill is unacceptable.
I will have you know that in the 20 years we have been married, Hank has never once forgotten my birthday or been late on a mortgage payment.
Paying your bills on time and loving your wife. I think that's sexy. And Peggy shoots back that she must have not found Dale sexy because she cheated on him with John Redcorn for years. And instead of being ashamed, being called out for being the hussy she is, she just decides to break the parameters of the list and include John Redcorn, even though he doesn't live on the street. Her lack of integrity knows no bounds.
Okay, so it goes John Redcorn,
Boomhauer, Con, and Adele. Then Bill and Hank.
or Hank and Bill.
It doesn't really matter, whichever.
Okay, I don't care how drunk you are. You don't have to think Hank is sexy by traditional standards, but my goodness, you can't possibly be drunk enough to say he and Bill are on equal tiers. Later on, at the concert, Hank is wanting to get in before everyone else.
Dad, wait up!
I didn't notice that until I started writing this video script.
I read a rumor on the internet that Chris frosted his bangs.
Dang internet. They don't care whose life they ruin.
Yeah, I already did a video about that. Before passing off their tickets, Bobby asks Hank the best way to ask Jordan to dance, to which Hank tells him to just be direct. This is kind of a nice moment between them, Bobby asking Hank for advice and all. The ticket collector tells Hank that the parents' section is in the skybox, despite Hank insisting he wants to see the show. Reluctantly, he goes up to the skybox and watches the concert on the television screen.
Hey, that's Todd.
And the concert turns into something vastly different from what Hank thought it was going to be. He sees the very suggestive dance moves from the band and freaks out. Meanwhile, Connie does a bro move and Bobby asks Jordan to dance and the two seem to be hitting it off once again. And twerking. Ugh. Hank is bothered, and when Bobby twerks on him, Hank drags him off. Now, some of you may say Hank went too far, dragging Bobby off like that, but I'm sorry, if my kid started grinding on my leg, I probably would have done the same. So they make it back home, and I can only presume there was a very awkward long drive home considering Houston is over 3 hours from Arlen. Luann asks how the concert went, and Bobby laments,
I was fast dancing with a pretty girl to one of my favorite songs. Then Dad ripped us apart.
Peggy asks if Hank is so uptight he won't let him dance with a girl, but Hank says they enjoyed it, so it's not the same. And Luann drops this red pill.
Everything now is sex, sex, sex. It wasn't like this when I was growing up. What is going on with our children?
Peggy sees the other women talking outside and decides this can be a good opportunity to make Hank seem a bit more loose. So she asks him to demonstrate the dance to her, and we get this wonderful piece of animation.
What the heck are they doing?
It doesn't go as planned. So the next day, Hank decides to perform a quote-unquote cleanse of Bobby's room and decides to remove anything he deems inappropriate to put in a time capsule until he turns 16.
Good Lord, what is this smut you're listening to?
It's not smut, it's Radio Disney.
It's kind of funny he'll still listen to Radio Disney when he's wanting albums with explicit material. Well, Bobby is still a kid after all. This will be important later. Now, this is the instance where I think Hank is going too far. For one, I'm more than sure that Hank purchased at least some of these items for Bobby, or was there when they were. So it's not like they were snuck in without Hank noticing, and some of these are just plain strange. What's wrong with this poster? It's just 4 dudes standing around. Teen magazines and his top hat too? I don't know where you're getting the idea he's too young for those.
Nudity.
Really, Hank? So he leaves Bobby with nothing left in his room to enjoy, the jerk. So Bobby is doing some chores in the yard in Dutch shoes for some reason. And again, Bobby is, well, being Bobby.
I'd love to.
Man, come quick! Redneck boy getting busy with lawn clippings!
And Con is being Con. So Hank resolves to take Bobby to the local Mennonite society to show him a more wholesome time, but nobody but him has any fun. When they get back home, there's a message for Hank on his answering machine from Jordan's father, inviting him over to talk about what happened at the concert. Hank accepts full responsibility for the incident, and Jordan's father and mother, dressed like Charlie Sheen and a rando college girl respectively, say,
"I'm glad you admit you overreacted. You got a little paternal and ruined the kid's night."
What? I don't think you understand what the problem was, Mr. Bronson.
Please, call me McB.
Oh my gosh. Charlie Sheen offers the Hills an apple martini while Jordan's mother explains that the two of them had a more strict attitude when it came to child rearing, but abandoned that principle when they couldn't take it seriously themselves. It's then that their son comes out, and he and the father do their father-son handshake.
Peggy, call the police.
Then they introduce him to the Hills. The son asks why his dad wasn't out partying with him the night before, and we get the most infuriating line in this episode.
"Where were you, man?"
Hey, someone's gotta work around here.
"Sure ain't gonna be me."
You know, you really could wear a shirt like McBee's.
Shut up, Peggy! So the mom tells the Hills that they prefer that their son drinks at home, apparently glossing over the fact that their son clearly drank the night before without them. That's what hair of the dog means. And then say it's funny watching him get buzzed playing Pictionary. Okay, so this scene really fascinates me, and that there is so much that can be inferred in these few lines. The most glaring thing for me is that either their son is at least 21 and simply decides to party all the time while choosing not to work and living under his parents' roof, or he's under the age of 21, possibly still in high school, and still goes out partying and drinking despite being underage, and the parents are cool with it. Which is even worse? If the latter were the case, I'm with Hank. Calling the police doesn't seem that crazy. And I'm pretty sure that it is the latter, considering the mother mentions that they prefer if her son drinks at home so they know he's safe. Though I think the more egregious crime here is that he's refusing to work and is so open about it. And don't give me the whole spiel that he may be going to school. Not only am I in the camp that believes you can manage a school schedule and work at the same time, at least part-time, but I also believe that if you have time to drink and sleep until the middle of the day just to drink more, you obviously have enough time and energy to earn a paycheck. So McJackass tells Hank that he can still have a friend-type relationship with Bobby, to which Hank adamantly refuses.
Hank, all you gotta do is be Bobby's friend. If not, who is he going to turn to when he's in trouble?
He won't even need to turn. We'll be right there, bam, in his face with a brick wall of rules, limitations, and discipline.
Y'all notice how Hank started going all alpha that it caused McDouche to step back? Nice.
My parents were a wall. I want to be a door that leads to a world of experiences.
Experiences, eh? Like what? The aforementioned getting buzzed and playing Pictionary so the family can laugh at you?
Nothing they say makes any sense.
I agree, Hank. I agree. But Peggy still wants to be on good footing with the cool parents, so she suggests all four of them take the kids out. Hank picks the place, which is an old-fashioned ice cream parlor, which I can only assume is in the Mennonite community. And from this bit, you can see Bobby and Jordan are having a good time. But McPathetic and his wife think it's embarrassing. Then another couple comes in, and they try to hide, but it doesn't go well.
Nancy? McBee? What are you doing in an ice cream parlor? I mean, we're just here so Tad can use the toilet. Go ahead, honey.
Going into a restaurant just to use the can without paying. I already don't like these people. Also, why even ask why they're in an ice cream parlor? They're obviously not buying a car battery. So Hank tells them that they're chaperoning their children.
Chaperoning. Nice job, Ronald Reagan.
Hey, don't call me that.
Yeah, don't call him that.
Great line. But Tank Top Mom is just giggling at the fact that them being there must be humiliating for their daughter. Then proceeds to brag about how her daughter is going to enjoy a limo ride with her, get this, high school sophomore friends. Wow, how can so much coolness be contained in one building? So the wife pushes back and says instead of them saving up to get a limo for their daughter's birthday, they're going to throw a slumber party with all of the boys and girls of her class, which immediately surprises Hank. And the I peaked in high school mom thinks that's progressive enough to maybe allow their daughter to go. Once the two cheap asses leave, the parents say that they're sure their daughter would love it if Bobby could attend. On the ride home, Peggy and Bobby try to give Hank the puppy dog eyes, knowing he isn't down with the idea. Peggy tries her best to convince them.
The Bronsons will be there, and this is Bobby's chance to hang out with the cool kids from the Learning Center. It would be more like an overnight study session.
Nice one, Mom.
No.
But Hank doesn't budge. Then Peggy starts berating Hank, saying how those other cool parents make them look like lame, uncool, stick-in-the-mud parents.
I cannot believe you're not letting him go. We never get to have any fun when you're around. We hate you!
Yeah.
Okay, as I've mentioned before, I do actually like Peggy, but my goodness, the way she approached the situation, and the fact that she doesn't understand why Hank is so steadfast about Bobby not going is just mind-blowing. Anyway, on with the episode. So when they get home, Bobby phones Jordan and says he can't make it.
But you know how it is with parents. Oh, wait, you don't, 'cause yours are fun. Bye.
Yeah, I treat you so bad with all the food I give you and the roof I put over your head so nicely.
Okay, this is another one of my hot takes. I don't think Hank is wrong for saying what he's saying. I know many people that absolutely abhor when parents list off such things because supposedly that's what a parent is supposed to do, and it shouldn't be seen as a special action worthy of praise or obedience. Well, I disagree. It's not what a parent is supposed to do, it's what a responsible parent is supposed to do. And I can list off many examples of parents I've come across that barely even do that, if at all. Hank works hard at his job and makes sure his family is provided for. He makes sure that they live in a nice neighborhood, they're eating well. He even makes sure he has enough money for Bobby's entertainment, as long as he approves of it. What's that, you say? Harvey, Hank shouldn't be able to yoink away something Bobby enjoys just because he's paying for it. Yes, absolutely he can. Bobby is his son, his underage son. Hank is his father, the one that is supporting him, and if he deems some activity or piece of media unacceptable, he is under no obligation to shell out the money for him to enjoy it. And I bring this up because Hank does stick to his guns. In a later episode, The Texas Panhandler, another great one I may have to analyze later, Bobby wants some ugly-ass jeans and Hank refuses to buy them, but he concedes that if Bobby wants to, he can earn the money himself to get them, and he won't disallow him to wear them. Now, jeans and an explicit CD are vastly different, but the principle is the same. Hank does concede that if Bobby pays, he can have his way. Okay, going off on a tangent here, let's get back to the situation at hand. Peggy basically undermines Hank's decision to not let Bobby go by effectively sidestepping Hank, forbidding Peggy to drive him. Instead, saying he can just take the bus, gives explicit instructions, and drops bus fare. So Bobby goes to the slumber party and... Wait a minute. I thought Jordan went to another school, and a secondary school for smart kids. That's how she knows Connie. Why are all of Bobby's classmates there? What is Joseph doing there? Besides that concert, they've hardly interacted. Okay, that's just a nitpick. Bobby sees Jordan putting her pillow next to his.
Ho, wait. Boys and girls are sleeping in the same room?
And it seems that Bobby is starting to see where Hank was coming from. So cooler parents are dropping off their daughter while she's yakking away on her cell phone, and Connie doesn't seem too pleased that she's there.
Nice necklace.
Wow, thanks. You can have it.
I guess this is supposed to mirror how childish the adults are acting, trying to seek validation from people they deem cooler by any means necessary. Also, I wonder how Con was convinced to let her go in the first place. We've already seen how he feels about sleepovers in general. So Cool Girl is introduced to Bobby and she says,
Well, I'll make sure you and Jordan have a lot of fun tonight.
I'm a good kid.
That's two thus far, Bobby. So McDumbass and his wife say they're leaving to go to the movies and assuring everyone they'll be back late.
We'll make sure to honk so we don't interrupt anything.
Oh my gosh. Are these people made of stupid?
You're the coolest, McBee.
Ugh, I guess they are. Let's not talk about how they're leaving a bunch of kids unattended at a birthday party. Let's not talk about the fact that they have easily accessible alcohol in the home as depicted earlier. let's not talk about how they're implying, even encouraging, some sort of sexual activity warranting a warning of them returning. And let's just not talk about the almost but probably adult-aged son that lives in the home that does nothing but party that could possibly make an appearance at any time. Nope, let's just not talk about all of that. What great people these a-holes are. So Cool Girl takes charge and says they're going to start playing some games.
Okay, the game is called 7 Minutes in Heaven. The closet will be heaven, I will be God.
This further freaks Bobby out, realizing that the parents are indeed actually leaving.
My God, they're really leaving. Is there a phone number where we can reach you?
The fact that Bobby, a kid, has the foresight to even ask when the parents couldn't be bothered is quite sick. Then we get this hilarious scene where all the husbands are doing yard work at the same time, and the wives seem to be showing off how sexy their husbands are. And Hank, I guess, is supposed to look lame because he's not wearing a thong and isn't shredded, which saddens Peggy. Then again, if I could have my choice based on this, I'd go with Con. Back at the party, the game is underway. Bobby is visibly uncomfortable, while some others are wanting to hear some noises.
I want to go home.
What the heck did she do to him? And they would have a coat like that. Bobby and Jordan's names get picked, but Jordan is apprehensive, saying,
Bobby and I just met each other. If we move too fast, isn't it going to ruin it? I mean, we haven't even talked online yet.
And despite this, Cool Girl forces her in there anyway, while the guys push Bobby in as well. That's pretty dang unsettling, being forced into such a situation where the two participants are clearly uncomfortable. The situation also seems to be egged on by their peers despite their protests. Meanwhile, back at the hills...
I rented a square dance video and we're gonna watch it as a family.
That's another strike against Hank. In the closet, Bobby gets excited about all of the coats. Wow, it's almost as if he's a kid or something. But Jordan presses that they don't have much time. I guess no one told this girl that y'all can spend the 7 minutes doing whatever, and that includes pocket surfing. So the two do the beta version of speed dating.
Do you got any pets?
An old dog.
What's your favorite food?
Pork pockets.
Ham or pepperoni?
Oh, that's a toughie. I gotta think about it.
Bobby!
Ham! No, pepperoni. No, ham!
There. I like you.
It's just that easy, huh? So they hear the other kids outside goading them to do something inappropriate. Bobby takes off his sock, saying that's as far as he's willing to go, but Jordan says they had to do more than that. Again, you don't have to do anything. But she starts taking off his shirt, and Bobby is looking very scared. Luckily...
Oh, thank God.
Hank comes in and puts an end to the madness. When he discovers that the parents aren't even there, he simply asks,
You guys got a game shelf?
So he rounds up all the kids and has them start playing Pin the Tail on the Donkey, which Cool Girl is not down with.
No way am I playing Pin the Tail on the Donkey. This is the saddest party that I've ever been to.
Well, I think we have our first contestant.
Hank is clearly immune to this Cool Girl's influence and continues the game. And funnily enough, the kids seem to be enjoying themselves. They are kids after all. Presumably, Hank calls all of the parents to come pick up the other kids from Tweedledee and Tweedledum's house, and it's not known if they're even back yet. Otherwise, I'm sure Hank would have kicked some ass.
I can't believe Hank Hill's so uptight he ruined little girl's birthday party.
I'm sorry, Mint, is that where your mind is going right now? You're more upset that a girl's party was ruined and not the fact that your young teenage daughter was left alone at a house with other teens? What the heck is with you? You're the parent that made sure all of the fire alarms were working in Hank's house before you even let Connie stay over for a few days. And that was a neighbor you knew for years. Yet somehow this would have been acceptable?
Thank God he showed up when he did, or I might be stuck in a closet right now getting felt up by Clark Peters.
Yes, thank you, Connie. I'm sorry that your own daughter had to spell it out for you just how severe this situation truly was. And that's just the extent of how Connie saw it. It could have been much worse. But no, there's no more on that. Con not coming over and whooping some ass would have been expected. Instead...
So, Hank really came in here and took control, huh? He'd crack a whip.
He really is sort of sweet with the kids, just like a big old gummy bear.
All right, I'm coming around. Hank Hill, pretty sexy.
Well, at least Peggy and probably Connie and Joseph know that Min and Nancy think Hank Hill is sexy. That's a weird thing to discuss openly in front of your children while they're just standing there. And to close out this episode, I guess Hank performs his own version of a punishment and has McLoser bring his daughter to the Mennonite community with Bobby so they can chaperone them. And I guess he's so bored he looks at his watch despite not wearing one.
In the closet? I was gonna kiss you, obviously. But my dang dad came in and, put a damper on my situation.
Bobby, he possibly saved you from becoming in-laws with these jackasses, but Bobby kisses her on the cheek, and Hank tells them none of that, so they just hold hands. Hank is at first about to tell them to call that off too, but relents and says that's fine, just in time for a Mennonite to call them animals, which Hank thinks is overreacting, showing that he isn't as uptight as others. The end. A lot of criticism this episode receives seems to revolve around how Hank behaves in this episode, that he's being too uptight and taking things too far with Bobby, and conversely, the Bronsons are too lax, showcasing that neither form of parenting is acceptable. And while I do agree partly with the former sentiment, one also has to be reminded that extreme actions sometimes do warrant extreme reactions. Emphasis on the word sometimes. Let's compare the two parenting styles. First, Hank. Listening and then denying buying the albums because he doesn't like the content, that's reasonable. Taking away all of Bobby's things because Hank deems it's too provocative, that's overreacting. Chaperoning a date of his kids at that age, somewhat reasonable. Going over to a kid's party because you forbade your son to go and he went anyway, perfectly reasonable. Not wanting Bobby to kiss Jordan on the cheek at the end, also perfectly reasonable. Let's give some context here. Now, I understand that for most people, Hank not even wanting Bobby to kiss Jordan on the cheek is too far, but I disagree. Hank is not wanting Bobby to grow up too quickly because he doesn't think he's old enough or emotionally mature enough to handle such things and what they could lead to. Now, you may be wondering, how would Hank know that? Well, let's look at how Bobby handled 2 breakups with girls he was already kissing.
Never seen.
I'm sweet on you, Connie. Connie, I'm your little candy man. No!
Hank not wanting Bobby to move too fast is based on experience. Granted, in the latter example, it's because Bill was putting ideas in his head, but that's also just a testament to how naive he is to relationships. So I'm with Hank on this one. I don't think Hank is being overly strict as a father. I would say his style of parenting is more favorable than his neighbor's. Con is a hover parent that makes Connie study and play the violin for hours a day, even at the expense of her having her own time. And Dale has little control over his son and openly admits he's afraid of Joseph. Now for the idiot parents. Enabling their most likely underage son to drink all day and not work. Unacceptable. Having a slumber party of a bunch of young teenagers of both boys and girls sleeping in the same room. Unacceptable. Seriously, you think the other parents would have agreed to that had they known they'd leave? Leaving said party and saying they hope they don't interrupt anything when they return. Burn garbage on their front lawn and run them out of town with pitchforks. Unacceptable. You cannot give me any context that would make any of what they did an acceptable thing for a parent to do. And I don't want to hear the excuse of, well, they're just going to do it anyway. No, that is not an acceptable reason to not even try to be a responsible parent. I cannot stand that line of reasoning, as if it absolves someone of any effort. There is a difference between a kid saying they're going to a friend's house but going to the caves instead, and a parent opening up their home to let their kid engage sexually with another kid. Just because there is a scenario where the former can occur does not mean that parents should accept it as the inevitable and not set boundaries for their children. That is how youths run amok. That is how society as a whole becomes less stable, because these boundless children are going to grow up into boundless adults with the propensity to not take anything seriously, to not understand the ramifications of their actions, thus hindering their growth as a functional adult.
Where were you, man?
Hey, someone's got to work around here.
Sure ain't gonna be me.
Okay, let's move on. I do like that in this episode, Bobby does start to understand the situation and how irresponsible the parents are when they leave. He has the foresight to ask if there's a number where they can be reached, even if they're driving off, and he's asking if the kids have an affair in the closet. Kind of silly, but he's at least being thoughtful. And this is the more subtle growth we see in this episode. Hank ultimately learns to be a bit more lax with Bobby while he's learning how to date and interact with girls romantically, but Bobby himself starts to realize that the boundaries Hank set are not for any malicious reason, they're for his safety. They're to keep him from getting into a situation that is potentially dangerous or could make him uncomfortable. You saw how scared he was when the parents left. Bobby knows that he isn't old enough to handle certain situations when he's alone. And that is a testament to Hank's parenting. Now, I'm sure that many of you had or at least knew someone who had parents similar to Jordan's parents, and I'm sure you're going to tell me that you or they turned out just fine. That's totally cool. In fact, my parents were probably more leaning toward them in terms of parenting attitude as well. I wouldn't say they were as extreme as the Bronsons, but there weren't that many boundaries in my household like Hank set. Granted, I was a teenager once, and I would lie to my parents to do something they wouldn't deem appropriate. That is something kids do, but thankfully they did instill in me what it means to be responsible and that actions have consequences. So I'd like to think I carried myself with a bit more foresight, maybe? My oldest brother and I didn't really have problems in our teen years. We were good students, and we were never out at unreasonable hours. My middle brother, well, that's a different story. The point I'm making here, despite my attitude toward the parents in this episode, is that I can go on and on about the detriments and positives when it comes to different types of parenting, but at the end of the day, there is no one-size-fits-all style of parenting. You can do everything correctly as far as being attentive, setting boundaries, and communicating with your children, but they may still act out. Conversely, you can be some awful parent that does the bare minimum at keeping your kid alive, and they can still turn out to be a successful, functioning member of society. It does happen. Sometimes a bad kid will just be a bad kid, and a good kid will just be a good kid. Bobby is a good kid. Even in the absence of his parents, he still does try to be responsible. And, also, he's a kid. He's only going to be a kid once and then an adult for the rest of his life. There's no reason a kid needs to engage in grown-up, unsupervised behavior at this time. He has his entire life to do that. Jordan seems to be a good kid too. Despite her parents trying desperately to come off as the cool parents at the expense of Jordan and other children's safety, they are obviously cognizant of her academic abilities. This is evidenced by her placement in the secondary education center with Connie and the fact that she takes trigonometry in junior high. So they do seem to have her future success in mind. They just need to prioritize her well-being over her social standing. And I'm not saying that their parenting style will for sure lead to their child going down a path of being a loser, but it certainly paves the way for it. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Harvey McLeod, and I'm here to make videos for you. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye!
An Eminem album that you would not... None of them. Until they're like adults.